Well, today we have lots of the news. We're gonna speak about this guy, and this guy. But at first, let's start from the front lines review, and we have news coming that Russia is planning for the major attack during the summer campaign. We have it from Ukrainian officials and lots of the media. Ukraine braces for potential large-scale Russian offensive by early summer. The Ukrainian General Commander Syrskyi also said that Russia essentially launches offensive in Sumy and Kharkiv regions, but still there is the question where Russia may attack. Some say about Chernihiv region, Sumy region, and even Zaporizhia regions could be the targets for Russian army. They might also intensify the strikes in Siversk and Donetsk regions. So potentially from Bryansk to Chernihiv, from Kursk to Sumy Oblast. They also might strike Kharkiv once again from two of the sides. Intensification of the fights in the eastern region, and Russia deployed lots of the forces there, as you can see from those markings. Plus, in Zaporizhia direction, somehow they're not saying about Kherson. Well, maybe because for Russia it's very difficult to cross the Dnipro River, and we're gonna tell about this river, which is very important for defense, not just for Ukraine, but also for Europe. It is crucial, guys. Well, we all understand that Russia cannot strike using all of those directions simultaneously, so they might deflect the attention of Ukrainian army somewhere or in multiple of the areas, but they would concentrate their massive strike in a single direction. Well, I guess that from the tactical perspective, there are just three of the profitable directions for Russia, and from the strategical perspective, just one. Well, let me tell you why I think like that. Those directions are Sumy, Donetsk region, and also Zaporizhia regions. But only Zaporizhia has a strategic potential for the Russian army and for Russia itself in a military perspective. Well, let me tell you why. Zaporizhia city is located just on the Dnipro River. This is the island of Hortitsa, the ancient homeland of the Ukrainian Cossacks. But if Russia occupies all of that, they would have the access to the other shore of Ukraine, all of the western Ukraine behind the Dnipro River. So if Russia is successful here, they might send their supplies, they might send their reinforcements and create the risk not just for Ukraine, but for entire Europe. To understand why defense of Zaporizhia, Dnipro and Kherson is so important, we need to zoom out like we are here already to check out the Dnipro River. So you see, sometimes it's wide, very wide river. And let's zoom into the random place. So the shore is not like, it's not flat. There are some of the hills. So it's the perfect defense line, which actually was working as the defense line during the Second World War. It was a very big trouble for any sort of the army to cross this river, and modern day armies, well, they do not have any difference with the ground operation. They need to conquer the geographical obstacles, and those wide rivers, it's very hard to cross, unlike as we see here in Zaporizhia. So it's actually a good area with lots of the bridges, and the river here is not very wide because there is the Dnipro gas dam. By the way, it was caputed 2 times during the Second World War. First time by Soviets not to let Germans to enter this shore, but it didn't work. And the second time by Germans not to let Soviets to chase them to Berlin. But after all, armies are able to cross the river in any case. However, it requires lots of the resources, lots of the supplies, and many more losses. And if you check the map, there is no wide river on the way for Russia, for example, to reach Poland or Moldova or Romania or other countries. The Dnipro River is the biggest water obstacle out there. It holds the Russian army, really holds. And it could be even over here if Russia is so successful occupying entire Donbass and the northeast side of Ukraine. Still, they would not able to cross the Dnipro River without heavy battles. And that's the main reason for our allies to deploy their forces in Kherson, Zaporizhia, Dnipro, Cherkasy, Kiev. I'm speaking about this coalition, mainly France and United Kingdom. They don't want to let Russia to cross the river. It's the red flag for them. It's the red line for our allies, this river. Because in that case, if Russia takes Zaporizhia, if they take Kherson, Dnipro, for example, they might send their forces to the Polish border in a matter of hours. And our allies, they don't want to fight for Poland, again, they don't want the Third World War, and that's why it's crucial for them to protect at least this territory of Ukraine. Yeah, not for United States, they don't care with the current White House administration, but for Europe, yes, it is crucial, guys. Well, you may also say that Russia might use Belarus to strike those Baltic countries, but with Ukraine there are multiple of the choices. Also, Russia wants to establish control over Moldova. They want to annex the country or transfer it to the Russian slave state, as they've done to Transnistria, for example, which is the part of Moldova. Yeah, we have the clown emojis here in Budapest and Bratislava. That's how the developers of the deep state military map joke about Orban and Fico. And to hold the front lines, the American support is very crucial for Ukraine, so Ukraine opened to buying United States military aid package for 50 billion United States dollars, Zelensky says. Many of the news agencies report about this story. And yeah, I found it on the Ground News, the place where I usually find any sort of the news relative to Ukraine and the world news, like other conflicts, tariffs, Donald Trump, trade war, and they have the dedicated chapter for the news from Ukraine. For example, this is the very important news for us. Trump avoids Steve Witkoff in Russia for talks with Putin about Ukraine. Many of the news sources report about this article. You may find any sort of the media which is more interesting for you. Here I usually go for the high factuality, and you may click on the news and find out the origin, but in general you understand what the news is about. Basically, Steve Witkoff wants Donald Trump to take the Russian scenario and Russian demands for occupying more of the Ukrainian territory. It is crazy. But you know, after Witkoff's interview to Tucker Carlson, I am not surprised here. And today he went to Russia with more talks. I'm gonna speak about it just a little later in this video. And now, guys, I want to tell you that Ground News is an amazing tool to deliver the information for you. Just look at this. You have all of the breaking news about any sort of the aspect, about any sort of the topic, concentrated in one platform, which is very easy to access. For example, I may check out the news about the helicopter crash which happened the day before yesterday. Many sources report about this aviation accident. It is very important for me because I analyze those events, and we may check out all of the necessary media report about it. Some even use very high factuality, so official reports in their articles. So Ground News for me is the absolute must-have if I want to reach any sort of the information. It is available as the website or as a mobile device application. And guys, please check out my link. It's ground.news/Dennis, where you can subscribe for this news platform. It is not the big media corporation, and they rely just on our subscriptions. Moreover, they support the job that I do here on YouTube, because they're the biggest long-term sponsor of the channel that I have. So they help me to grow as well as you. Ground News, thank you so much for sponsoring this video. You really nailed it, delivering up-to-date information to me and to my audience, so I may with pride recommend this product. And this Keith Kellogg vision of the post-conflict Ukraine tells exactly the same story. The blue area is where the British, French and Ukrainian forces are being deployed. Here is the control just of the Ukrainian forces, yeah, this sand color. And the red area goes for the Russian control, so basically Kellogg proposes German scenario. Then Germany was divided after the Second World War. Well, I don't honestly think that this variant would work, because Russia aims towards Zaporizhia, they aim towards Kherson, and they will continue the war until the occupation of those very crucial settlements. Russia wants to take those cities, to move their forces across the Dnieper River, and then to blackmail European Union or NATO. And if they wouldn't agree with some of the Russian security concerns, remember how Russian officials told that they don't want NATO to be deployed in Poland, in basically all of the eastern countries. Well, if Europe is not okay with that, Russia potentially might concentrate lots of the forces and to use their bridgeheads in Zaporizhia and Kherson to advance very fast to reach Poland, maybe Romania or any sort of the other country. But it only might work in case of the ceasefire actually. So in this case, if Russia takes Kherson and Zaporizhia, the ceasefire is absolutely must-have for the Russian scenario of the further escalation, because they need the time to accumulate enough forces to reform their army and to produce more of the iron, tanks, BMPs, whatsoever. They need to catch Ukraine off guard with this advancement scenario, but with the French and British forces deployed in those cities across the Dnieper River, allies would have a direct coast to protect, for example, Ukrainian skies or the Black Sea, everything. And for this reason, Russia would never agree on deployment of those forces. By the way, this Amber area, as you can see, it's not that important for our allies because they take care about themselves, for them not to fight in Poland or other states. They don't want Russia to cross the river, that's their main objective. So Ukraine will fight alone against the Russian forces if Russia enters Sumy, Kharkiv, Chernigiv, and Borispol. That's where I used to live before. So everything of that goes to this very important name, which is written on those big letters, Dnipro River. The importance of this river is the reality. Now we see how it influences the Allies' decisions, so we have the puzzle resolved. But nevertheless, I have so many questions to this Calyx plan. First of all, this demilitarized zone, which is 18 miles wide, so they draw it over here, but actually the front lines are much bigger. Here is the active fight ongoing between Russian and Ukrainian border. Russia entered Ukraine over here, plus over here through Belarus. So we should protect the entire border between Ukraine with Belarus and between Ukraine and Russia. Yeah, here's the war obstacle, but it should be also considered as some sort of the demilitarized zone. And guys, it's impossible to control it. This vast area is more than 2,000 kilometers. We know it from the history, from experience. There were some of the proclaimed republics over there in Donetsk and Luhansk, and it was absolutely not possible to control that border. There was shooting, people were zeroed from both of the sides. So the post-Second World War German scenario, I don't think that it will work in Ukraine. No, and Russia is not willing to stop until they reach the control over the Ukrainian territory behind the Dnipro River. It's their main freaking goal, at least for the next couple of years. Well, Keith Kellogg said that the Times article misrepresent what I said. We saw that map. I was speaking about the post-ceasefire resiliency force in support of Ukraine's sovereignty. In discussions of partitioning, I was referencing areas or zones of responsibility for an allied force without United States troops. I was not referring to a partitioning of Ukraine, but actually that's what he meant. Because how you can send those forces on the Russian-controlled territory, and he also says about the ceasefire, so I guess that the Times article is after all right. Meanwhile, Trump's fixer Witkoff attends Kremlin, so he met with the Russian dictator Putin. You can see them here. As you can see, Witkoff is greeting Putin like he's the anthem of the United States of America. So with his warm heart, why didn't he give the heart to Putin like Elon Musk did to the crowd then? Just a half of the gesture. Come on, Witkoff. You know that Putin likes that stuff, reference to the history. And yes, this visit is happening after Russia hit the Ukrainian residential area, unaliving many of the civilians, including children. This freaking Witkoff is greeting Putin from his heart. Guys, America is lost. Hopefully not forever. And by the way, Witkoff is on the way to Oman, where he will meet and negotiate with Iranian delegation via mediators probably, but he's very active, as you might see. Trump wants to resolve all of the conflicts with the real estate tycoon, who is fooled actually by many of the dictators, including Putin. Well, anyways, Reuters published the article that even before this meeting, Witkoff reported to Donald Trump that it is better to support Russia with its initiative or ambitions to occupy Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk region. He stated that it could be the shortest way to achieve ceasefire in Ukraine. Yeah, just let Russia occupy those territories, just let Russia to cross the Dnieper River and to create a possible huge threat for entire Europe. Wow, the logic is brilliant. Yeah, guys, I don't know even how to comment that stuff. Well, the same article reports that there are people in the president's team who are against this scenario. And Donald Trump still hasn't came out with his own idea or decision. But something tells me that he will finally support Witkoff's idea, but also how Donald Trump might influence Ukraine in that case. Cancel the military support, cancel intelligence, He already did it like a few weeks ago, and Ukraine didn't beg for anything. And Ukraine will not give up its territories. Even in that case, Ukraine will not present Zaporizhia and Kherson back to Russia without any fight. It's illogical. But this Witkoff, he thinks differently. He lives in his own world where he is able to trade the Ukrainian territory. That's the absolute delusional perception of reality, or total absence of that perception. By the way, this guy also lives in his fantasies. I think it's the historical book with some of the maps there. Yeah, he has his own history, his own ideology. Yeah, those are just insane people who are ruling two of the biggest nuclear superpowers. Yeah, nuclear superpowers, because it's the only power Russia has now. It's not the economy superpower after all. And you know, Witkoff opened himself that he follows the Russian narratives after meeting with Dmitriev. He went to the interview with Tucker Carlson. He said that bullshit, basically justifying for Russia to occupy Ukrainian territories. Well, probably Dmitriev promised something to Donald Trump's team, or maybe to Witkoff himself personally. They continue to bargain about everything, but Putin has his personal ambitions, his personal goal to occupy Ukraine. And we understand that, judging on the Putin's rhetorics. The bad thing for us that Witkoff is very close to Donald Trump, so he might influence his decisions, yeah. And Witkoff is in the same team with Donald Trump Jr., with Tucker Carlson, with Elon Musk. They don't care really about Ukraine. Well, even though Donald Trump posted today that Russia has to get moving, too many people are no more, thousands a week, in a terrible and senseless war, a war that should have never happened and wouldn't have happened if I were president. Oh, those conditions in English language would not have happened if I were still learning all this stuff, even though I can pronounce that, but I cannot tell as well as Donald Trump posted that hundreds of the times, if I were president, blah blah blah. Well, in fact, he is not pressing Russia even slightest. And let's be honest, even if he applies the strictest sanctions on Russia, it will not stop Russia immediately. Actually, it could take years for the Russian economy to really feel it. So I don't think that Donald Trump really has any sort of the lever to act on Putin right now. Even Joe Biden didn't have it. If he had, he would use it. Oh, again, one more condition in English language. So for Putin, he just uses Donald Trump to reach his own personal goals. That's it. Donald Trump and his team, they're very, very incompetent. The only way, like Donald Trump might cope with Russia, is to continue the support of Ukraine or even to increase that support. But on his rallies, he said that no, we shouldn't give weaponry to Ukraine. It is bad. Even his personal son says that no, Zelensky is the fraud. He is just stealing our money. So do you really think that he might support Ukraine with military? Well, judging on his rhetorics, I have huge doubts about it. Well, the good thing that Ukraine still has the support from the other allies. Our European partners actually increased the military support of Ukraine, sending more and more equipment, ammunition, and yeah, thank you guys, especially from Europe, but also from the United States of America, for your kind support of Ukraine. And yeah, my fellow Canadians, Koreans, Japanese people, everyone except Russia. Alright, and media reports that the resource deal probably will not be signed by Ukraine because the new variant, which was proposed by Donald Trump, is absolute madness. There, Ukraine is just obligated to pay some sort of the reparations to the United States of America, surrendering the access to the minerals without any sort of the security guarantees for itself. It is no-go. Zelensky, or I guess any sort of the other president, would never ever sign that deal. That's like the open day robbery, and probably Donald Trump expected that move from Ukraine. That's why he basically changed the deal, like Ukraine is not signing the deal, so will not provide military support for Ukraine any longer. I definitely expect him to say like that. Oh, we have good news coming from Estonia. They arrested the Russian tanker of the Russian Shadow Oil fleet. Awesome job, Estonian Coast Guard. You did it very well. This vessel was carrying the Russian crude oil. It took it from Ust-Luga port, not far away from St. Petersburg. The vessel is registered in Djibouti, but it could belong to some other company. captain is Chinese, the other sailors are mainly from Mauritius. So Russia creates those vessel companies from all around the world. They hire people to carry their oil, and the flag of the registration here doesn't really matter that much. It's like the country of the registration of the airplane, so it registered somewhere, but you may operate it in totally other country if you have approvals, but it seems like this ship doesn't have the approval. And Djibouti side already told that they don't have this vessel in their national register. So definitely a shadow fleet, probably it was the main reason for arrest. And immediately the ex-head of the Russian FSB and the Russian Grey Cardinal Patrushev said that someone stays behind Estonian action. And the situation with arrest is terrible, and we should think how to react on that, he said. The German defense minister Boris Pistorius came to the conclusion that the peace in Ukraine is unachievable in a nearby perspective. Wow, I'm not a politician, I don't have lots of the data, but even for me and for many of my viewers, it was understandable from the very beginning that all of those negotiations which Trump decided to conduct, those are just fake negotiations. Alright guys, now let's go to the front lines. Again, we have some of the data, some of the images. I should film the big report about what is happening out there, and I'll publish it on my Rumble channel. But here is the job of the Ukrainian drone operators in the Donetsk region. So far, Russia is losing lots of the vehicles, however, they propel with infantry forces. We have even some videos from Toretsk, but again, guys, I cannot show you those GoPro images here, unfortunately. But what I can tell you that Ukraine is successful in imprisoning some of the Russian soldiers. This is the area of Kursk, so Russian territory. Russians run very fast there before, but were captured by Ukrainian side. After all, in the Kursk region, it is not that bright as the Russian military bloggers try to explain from the very beginning of their Kursk counteroffensive. Alright, and the latest frontline updates, we have the movement from the Russian side just for today, guys. Yes, I have to present those news, even though they're not that positive for Ukrainian side. Well, Russians attack very close to Kotlarivka. It's the last village on the way to reach the border with Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and yeah, it's very close, like 3 kilometers away already. Here and check the Russian army advancement. It was yesterday and it is today. They occupied 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 lines. Well, if Russia would go further to the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, it is understandable that it is not just concentrated on Donetsk Oblast as it promised. And by the way, there is the presence of the Russian army in Sumy region, also in Kharkiv, but they didn't include everything of that to their constitution, which again means that the goal for Russia is to occupy all of the Ukraine, or as many territories as possible. Well, in the north here, Ukraine still holds position, creating huge threat for 2 of the Russian army groups. One in this area and the other one is here. They're under the risk to be encircled basically. But there was the other Russian movement. Actually, I predicted, not myself, but with the help of the reports online from the Ukrainian commanders on the ground. It was the public information shared, so it was yesterday and it is today. We see the Russian movement towards Kalinovo village again yesterday and today. Kalinovo is the small village, but nevertheless Russia moves here, creating those kind of the pockets for Ukrainian army, their usual tactics. So because Russia is unable to take Toretsk fully under control, still there are some of the quarters of the town which are under Ukrainian control. Moreover, Ukraine started the counterattack, so Russia decided to send the reinforcements to the other places of the Toretsk direction, maybe to deflect the attention of the Ukrainian attacking group towards Toretsk. And Russian officials, by the way, has already reported that they've occupied Toretsk fully. As I remember, it was 7th of February, but Toretsk is still under Ukrainian control partially. So Russian army still tries to be effective, but they scroll very slowly compared to what it was several months ago. Well, maybe after all they're definitely accumulating their resources to attack Ukraine harder in some other place. And now, my friends, please don't forget to check out my personal link in the video description just below, where you may find the Ground News, the sponsor of today's video, and also greatest supporter of this channel. Greatest only after you, because you, my friends, you rule it. Without you, I'm really nothing, so thank you so much for watching my videos. You're awesome, and as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.